This is Pong. The idea is simple, but believe it or not, this seemingly straightforward game was the spark that ignited a fire, the defining moment that set off a chain reaction.
Nowadays, it seems that almost everyone has a video game console within reach of their fingertips, and it wouldn't be that way if it were not for Pong. Mario, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, and all your favorite video games have that simple white square to thank for their existence. But what did it take to get from here to here?
While Pong may be the most influential of early video games, it certainly was not the first. Thomas T. Goldsmith Jr.'s 1947 cathode ray tube amusement device is debatably the first video game, kicking off a long list of advancements that preceded Pong and its eventual successors.
Space War was soon released as the first coin slot powered game, which led to Galaxy Game, unsuccessfully developed by Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney. After their failure, the pair decided to start their company Atari. Bushnell hired Alan Alcorn, a computer scientist and electronic engineer, to help design games. Because Alcorn was inexperienced in the field, Bushnell had him work on a secret project to get him accustomed to game development. For Alcorn's warm-up exercise, Bushnell asked Alcorn to replicate Magnavox's ping-pong simulation. Unexpectedly, Alcorn not only replicated Magnavox's design, but improved on it. By implementing different speeds of the ball based on where it hit the paddle and a variety of sound effects, Alcorn's design would inevitably appeal to consumers. So impressed with it, Atari decided to sell Pong. First born as a coin-fed, arcade-style game, Pong was set up in a local bar. It was an instant success, and even broke down at one point because too many coins had been inserted. The sensational device quickly spread across the nation, and Atari was prompted to produce a take-home version. Within a year, Pong was plugged into TVs across America. Thus, Pong became the first commercially successful video game, a defining moment that began an era.
Atari continued to thrive, and Pong burrowed a niche in American society that could only be filled by video games. Though Pong's digitalized beat began to slowly fade, its impact still resonated across the country.
But the demand for take-home games continued, and more consoles began to blossom. Cult classics like the NES and eventually the Nintendo 64 paved the way for ensuing consoles. As opposed to earlier take-home video games, these devices allowed multiple games, embedded on different plug-in cartridges, to be played on one system. In conjunction with gaming computers, which utilized floppy disks to swap games, the gaming industry was able to diversify. Quickly, handfuls of genres popped up, allowing certain games to cater to specific demographics. From this sudden expansion of genres, a new entity was conceived that would later become a staple in American gaming, the first-person shooter.
Wolfenstein 3D paved the way for many first-person shooters, all compounding on similar gameplay mechanics. Published in 1995, ID Software's Doom was one of the biggest titles to succeed it. The game, played on a PC, was a landmark in the first-person shooter's inevitable rise in popularity. Games like these allowed the players to feel immersed in the game like nothing else before, as they became the character. But tragedy struck, threatening to derail the FPS. On April 20th, 1999, seniors Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold attacked Columbine High School in what would later be known as the infamous Columbine Massacre. Harris and Klebold entered the school and began firing on students. At the end of the massacre, 12 students and 1 teacher had passed away. 21 were injured, and Klebold and Harris committed suicide. In the ensuing aftermath, investigators sought to find a motive for the attack. Video games surfaced as one of the leading contributors to the violent Columbine Massacre.
Thought to have been desensitized to real blood, gore, and murder, many believe Doom was a key factor in Klebold and Harris's decision to shoot the school. The video game industry, especially the first-person shooter, faced potential shutdown after the school shooting and the many mass shootings that followed.
Regardless, first-person shooters have survived and are being produced faster than any other genre. The increasing interest in video games caused the market to rapidly expand, bringing about mobile gaming, better take-home consoles, multiplayer games, and sophisticated motion-controlled systems. With the Wii, video games were able to involve players like never before, introducing an unprecedented augmented reality. The Wii was a commercial success and sparked an entire new trend, and a system that dipped into almost every demographic of America.
This type of play has changed the industry and made it even more possible to become a part of the game. The line between human and machine was slowly beginning to fade, and video games were offering a more extensive and realistic alternate reality.
According to the vice president of EEDAR, a video game research company, it is vital for companies to update to the new generation.
Traditionally, video games were viewed as something where you sit down on a couch, high mental engagement, low physical engagement, and they're trying to transition that.
The greatest innovation in motion-controlled peripherals is the Oculus Rift. The Oculus Rift is a virtual reality head-mounted display that allows you to be fully immersed in the game. The player wears a pair of goggles that have a built-in three-dimensional screen, and the movements that the character makes parallel those of the player. This is the ultimate product in alternative reality gaming and the epitome of motion-controlled devices.
It all started with a kid who wanted more out of the gaming experience. Palmer Luckey, the designer of Oculus Rift, searched specifically for a head-mounted system, a matrix where he would be completely plugged into the game. He looked but never found a thing. Luckey decided he would create a product of his own, and that's exactly what he did. Luckey began in his parents' garage with only passion and an idea. He recruited friends and begged for donations, amazingly getting exactly what he needed to work on his project. A few years later, they had a design and a working prototype. Now Oculus Rift is gaining momentum and is becoming one of the most highly invested technologies in gaming. Complete augmentation of gamer to game is the goal, and that goal is being met.
The future of gaming has extremely high potential, displayed not only by the Oculus Rift device, but many immersive alternate reality systems. Some critics condemn the increasingly blurred line between reality and the virtual world, which is stimulated by motion control, online gameplay, and immersive visual headpieces. Others argue that the next big step in entertainment and education. Regardless, video games as simple as Pong played on an arcade screen, to the more complex Call of Duty played on an Oculus Rift, video games have buried themselves into our society and integrated man and machine for decades.